Welcome everybody. I'd like to ask Chief Roberta Joseph to come on up, Travis Dolosky, Elizabeth Hall. If you want to join us up here, that'd be great. And welcome everybody.
Wow, what a wonderful turnout. You all make me so nervous. Okay.
The screen is right down
Okay. Drin Hozo, Hockey, Roberta Joseph, Trundakwichin, Dawson City, Huichin. I'm Roberta Joseph, Chief of the Trundakwichin from Dawson City, Yukon Traditional Territory and the traditional territory of the Han Nation. It's always an honor to represent Trundakwichin Council and citizens at any event. I'd like to acknowledge that I have a few council members and senior staff with me today and throughout this weekend. At this time, I'd also like to express my appreciation for the invitation to be a part of this presentation on Nun Cho Ga. Before I begin, I would like to pay my respect to Elder and Councillor Jesse Dawson for opening up this event in a good way and to express my gratitude to Chief Bill and Council from Kwanlundun First Nation and Tahan Quechan Council for always providing a warm welcome to their traditional ancestral lands and territory. On behalf of our group, it's a pleasure to welcome you all to our joint presentation on Nun Cho Ga. Jeff Bond from Yukon Geological Survey Branch, Elizabeth Hall from Paleontology, Yukon Government Paleontology Branch, as well as Travis Dolosky from Treadstone Gold Corp. Together, we will be sharing this remarkable story. This presentation is about the return of Nun Cho Ga. The Han Athabaskan language translation of her name is Big Animal Baby. In our presentation today, you will hear the story about how Nun Cho Ga's powerful spirit marked each individual involved in her recovery. You'll hear about their discovery, the collaboration, the ceremonies, and the recovery in addition to other rare paleontology in the world. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Travis, who will be presenting on Treadstone Gold Corp.
Good morning, everybody. I am nervous. It's been a long time since I've been in front of a lot of people. But good morning. Thank you for having me. It's quite the journey, a little bit of an airplane ride, but anyways, Eureka Creek is where we found the mammoth. It's about an hour and a bit from Dawson City, 60 kilometers if you say you beelined it, like straight there. No windy roads, no nothing. I'm horrible at this. So the basin that's the Eureka Creek Basin. And I'm shaking. I'm so nervous, guys. It's a lot of people. So, thank you. Thanks. So, the star marks where the mine is actually located in the Eureka Creek Basin. It's just off the Indian River. Okay, so this picture, is this the video? This is the video.
You can ask them to play it.
Okay. Before we play it, so what we're doing now is we're removing the overburden from the pay gravel at the lower part of the creek there. So we have to mechanically remove it. So what we're doing is we're taking the dozer and the excavator and we're loosening up because it's big chunks of ice. Like the whole tributary is just ice. It's a big ice wedge. What's that called? Did I nail it?
Frozen silt.
Frozen silt. There we go. With lots of frozen water in there. But what we do is we break it up with dozers and excavator, and then we load it into rock trucks, and then we take it off to a dump pile, and then we put it back when we're done. You can play it now if you like. So where the excavator is moving now, that's all broken up from the ripper of the dozer, and he's just loading it to take it off to the dump pile. And then, so where this drone is going is to the location of where I found the Nun Cho Ga. Yeah, I'm shaking the whole stage here. Yeah, so what we do is we take all the pay off, and then we wash the pay gravel, which is just above the bedrock. Because gold is heavier than, let's say, all the other sorts of rocks and stuff. You see that? My legs are shaking. Okay, so you need like a laser pointer here. So, you know, is this the end of the video there?
Yeah, that's the end of it.
Perfect. Okay, so you see how it comes down like this, kind of the ice and silt, and then it's flat where the dozer was? So what I was doing is that where it comes down, where it's flat like that, the dozer leaves kind of like a quarter circle. So what I was doing is I was taking the ripper on the excavator, which is the best way I can describe a ripper is like a finger with a fake nail on it. Ladies. And the reason why I decided that, because you can replace that fingernail. And what the ripper piece, it has a tooth on it. And when you're digging in the hard silt and the rock and the concrete, or not concrete, there's no concrete there, but ice and hard material, it wears down. That's why I say it's like a fingernail. So I was, a quarter circle there, I was squaring off the cut. So what you want to do is you want to square off the cut so you get the most floor space, so you get the most amount of gold you can get. Because if you leave that little, you never know, there could be a couple ounces in there. So that's what I was doing when I found Nun Cho Ga. Here she is. So these two pictures are about, I'd say, 3 to 5 minutes after she came out of the wonderful earth. Here's another story. So that was about 11:30, and it was June 21st, which is National Indigenous Day, which was, I don't know, I'm speechless. I still can't believe I found this. It's, yeah. Yeah, I'm speechless. But after we found that, we called paleontologists. I think we called you, right?
Grant.
Oh, we called Grant. That guy right there. And it's when Nun Cho Ga left the site, the storm that came through was, and I swear the raindrops were size of golf balls. It was just, you'll have the video of that.
I will.
Yes. Okay, it's coming, guys. It's coming. But right now, I'd like to thank you. I'm shaking. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is Jeffrey.
Thank you, Travis. You did a great job. Before I begin, I would like to thank and just acknowledge that it's an absolute privilege to be a part of this. I'll hold it together. And I'd like to thank the Toronto Quechin government and my employer for allowing me to be a part of it and supporting me. So let's go on to the recovery. I got an email from Grant at 2 p.m. or so on the day, on solstice, on the day that she came out of the sediment there. And I was in Dawson City. I had a team of people with me. And we embarked for Eureka Creek immediately. And we arrived at about 3:30 p.m. onto site. It was a beautiful day. And Nun Cho Ga was in an excavator bucket at that point. She had a lot of tarps over her and sleeping bags, and she was well protected, and it was sort of delaying the inevitable thaw at this point in time. And so she was stored very nice. This is the moment we arrived at the excavator bucket. Brian McGoggin from Treadstone is there in the safety vest, the orange safety vest. So we had a quick look at the mammoth at that point in time, and we realized we didn't have a lot of time. So we went down to the cut, and we wanted to spend some time at the cut, just get a better idea talk to Travis. He was on the excavator still down there. This is us walking up to meet Travis at that point in time. You can see the massive ice blocks around, and that is because of the style of mining that they're doing here. They're ripping it with the teeth, and you get these large chunks. It was very challenging to actually walk to the cut at this point, but Travis was there to meet us. And we went to, he took us right over to the spot where Nun Cho Ga had come out of the bank. And so as a surficial geologist and the team that I had there, which I'll introduce in a second, our goal here is to really describe the site. Not get into the weeds too much in terms of what happened and what was going on, how was she preserved, and all these things, but we really wanted to just make the most of our time there and describe the site as best as possible. And so we went about doing that, and what were the different units that were within the layers of the sediment in which she was preserved, and get our hands on things. And so that's what we're doing here. And then, there was a few bits and pieces from her that were on site too that we gathered. There was fur in some of the sediment that had been put aside by the Treadstone employees, thankfully. So we gathered that. There is a piece of this is the cecum, which is part of the intestinal tract that had been ripped out of her. So we collected that as well. That's an important piece that we'll be able to do some dating on, and Elizabeth will expand on that. So we collected these bits and pieces, and then just as we were about to sort of wrap up, we thought we'd best get some drone imagery of the site, get a better idea of what was, just capture some photos as best we could. And we noticed this storm coming up the valley. And we're in the right limit, the right fork of Eureka Creek. It's fairly high up in a basin, and this storm was advancing up the valley. So I raced back to the pickup truck, left the crew at the discovery location, and flew the drone for maybe 5 minutes before the raindrops started to fall. And I could see them scrambling. If you could play this with sound, that would be awesome. And this is what ensued. Honestly, people, the skies literally opened up. It was incredible. The thunder and lightning that was flashing around us was beyond anything I'd experienced before. It was almost like, do we even get out of the pickup truck? At this point in time, we drove back up to Nun Cho Ga and thought, geez, we have to get moving here. And there's water, entering the excavator bucket, and it was the mine shut down. I mean, it didn't last long, maybe 10, 15 minutes or something like that, but it was absolutely torrential. The storm that said, and it was as though Nun Cho Ga was like, it's time to go. We have to move. So we took Nun Cho Ga back to Dawson City, where we were met there, and were taken to an appropriate place to refreeze her. And this is a picture of the recovery team that was with me. We were investigating landslides in the Dawson City area at the time, and Professor Dan Sugar from the University of Calgary was there with us. His master's student Jackson Bodker and an assistant Holly Baziak, both from University of Calgary, myself, and then Derek Cronmiller from the Yukon Geological Survey. So I had an expert team to help me out that day. It was absolutely fantastic, and we couldn't have been better, more well-positioned, I think, at that time. So at this point in time, I'd like to hand it over to Chief Joseph again. This is the advance.
Nun Cho Ga has reminded our First Nation of our long-standing presence on the Chundakwichin traditional territory and our responsibilities to all living entities that have sustained our home and our people for thousands of years. We are Denaju, First Nations people of our land. We are Trundakwichin, the people who lived and live at the mouth of the Klondike River. We live Trehude, our way of life. The discovery of Nun Cho Ga is about more than just science. She is more than a historic specimen. Nun Cho Ga was, and is, a living being, one of our long ago ancestors. She had a heartbeat, lived, and passed on into her next journey on Trundakwichin lands. As a result, our First Nation people have a responsibility to care for her. The promises Ta'awate made long ago are the core of our identity as Denaju. It is a source of our wealth, the reason we endure. It is the root of our kinship with the land and our animals, who taught us how to survive and how to live. These promises are cheerful obligations, as when we look after our relatives, they look after us, including this little big baby female woolly mammoth, Nun Cho Ga. As these obligations of ours transcend time, Denaju law and our own Trundakwichin Heritage Act oblige us to make decisions that will respect Nun Cho Ga and her stewardship. Our Heritage Act and our treaty agreement stipulates the tools of Trundakwichin government to provide stewardship or custody of heritage resources within our traditional territory. With the guidance of our elders and citizens, we can respond in a more fluid and respectful way, while at the same time delivering collaborative networks with our partners and new acquaintances. Collaborative efforts are based on the foundation of trust. This virtue requires efforts between all interested governments and stakeholders. Nun Cho Ga, this powerful baby ancestor, helped each one of our groups to remove the barriers, delivered efficient reporting, and respecting TH's heritage, culture, and traditions. On June 21st, 2022, when Aboriginal, Métis, and Inuit First Peoples were celebrating National Indigenous Day with our communities across Turtle Island. Mind you, this is not just any day. It's a very powerful day for the First Peoples of Canada. On this very day, we were gifted with this baby mammoth. It was a beautiful sunny day, a warm sunny day. About the time she arrived in Dawson was about the time the weather changed. When I was informed about this by senior staff, it was surreal. I knew this was a remarkable find and that we needed to show our respect for the gift of our ancestor returning to us. The senior staff quickly engaged with our elders, and we needed to give the baby a name in preparation for the ceremonies in the days to come. We organized with Yukon and the mining company to meet Nun Cho Ga in a respectful gathering. This is where we discovered her gender. She was a remarkable sight to see. We were all in wonderment at this amazing gift before us. We were all speechless. Most of us gathering there were meeting for the first time. We didn't know what to expect. We stood by as Councillor Van Bibber led us with a touching ceremonial prayer and smudge over Nun Cho Ga. After the ceremonial prayer and brief speeches, we planned to conduct a visit to the mine site of where Nun Cho Ga was discovered and conduct a ceremonial prayer there as well. Both Yukon government, Minister Palais, Jeff Bond, and Brian McCoffin, owner of Treadstone Gold Corp, supported our recommendation. It was a powerful ceremony in welcoming our ancestor back and gift her with a name suitable to her being. Doing this with the support and respect of both the government and miner, this is where the barriers fell away and trust began to build. A day or so later, we gathered at the site of Nun Cho Ga's discovery location. The owners of Treadstone Gold Corp, Brian and Sharon McCoffin, and their staff welcomed us to their mining camp. The majority of us were transported by chopper. The weather was great, clear sky, and a hot sunny day. We extended an invitation to the KPMA to join us. Brian and Sharon and their staff were amazing, patient, accommodating, cheerful, and truly hospitable. Following a hearty meal, we all went off to the area of discovery. Getting there, as you can see from the photo, the muck was knee-deep, and the staff used almost every type of equipment to transport us to the location. There must have been like about 20 or 30 of us. Some even went in barefoot just to partake in this amazing journey we found ourselves in together. A journey to the exact location of Nun Cho Ga's discovery where remains of her hair still entrenched in the soil. Councillor Van Bibber provided another ceremony prayer and smudge. Nun Cho Ga brought us together on a respectful, collaborative journey. Getting to the exact location wasn't as easy as we thought. While doing it, I think all of the wildlife out there could hear laughter for miles from each one of us being stuck in the mud bog. As you can see in the photo, one of our elders, John, had bare feet. He chose to take off his boots at the beginning of the mud bog because he got stuck and decided to walk bare feet. A few minutes after leaving the site, in one of the last choppers, the mine was hit with the same big rain and lightning storm as the day she was discovered there and taken out of there. She is a very powerful ancestor, one that we need to have high regard for in her stewardship. As a self-governing First Nation, we are able to work collaboratively with interest groups in our traditional territory. This story is a true demonstration of how heritage resources in TH traditional territory should be managed. We will continue to work in partnership with the Yukon government on the well-being of Nun Cho Ga. Together, we will decide Nun Cho Ga's future in a way that honors her and traditions, her and our traditions and our laws. I would like to thank the miner, Brian and Sharon McCoffin of Treadstone Mining Corp, for stopping and respecting Nun Cho Ga when they found her, and the Yukon government crew responsible for taking care of Nun Cho Ga since her return to our community. We have much to learn from Nun Cho Ga. We are grateful she has chosen the present to reveal herself to all of us. We are thankful for the stronger relationship Nun Cho Ga has already initiated, fostering, and continues to build. Masi Cho.
Thank you, Chief Joseph. Beautiful words. I'd like to take you through a little bit about the site. This is just another video you can play just to give you an idea of what the site looks like in detail, and with some of my colleagues that were working on it. This was August 14th. Should be able to just click on the picture and it'll play the video. So the section is about 20 meters high, tall now. It was much shorter, or not so tall at the time when it was discovered, but they continued mining down in the face, so it revealed more sediments below the discovery site. It mostly consists of loess, that is windblown silts, that have washed down into the basin. There is gravel units within this section as well, and I'll go through that in a minute, but it just gives you some perspective on what the site looks like later, what it looked like later on in the summer, and some scientists working there in the middle of August. So this is the discovery location. You can see a small tributary coming into the right fork of Eureka Creek. The small tributary sort of on the right-hand side. And when Nun Cho Ga was alive, there would have been an alluvial fan produced from this small tributary out into the drainage. And that alluvial fan, that accumulation of sediment from the tributary, is really what the material is that they're having to remove in order to get at the Eureka Creek gravels underneath. And so that's an important landform that is now represented in the stratigraphy of the section. There's just a modern alluvial fan for reference in the Kluane Range. This is the section as it looks today. There's a star for where the mammoth came from. There's some scientists on the section as well. And I'll just walk you through the various stratigraphic units in order to give you an idea on what we think at this point in time, the sort of preliminary understanding of the history exposed at the site. And I have to say that this it's a world-class stratigraphy as far as I'm concerned, and understanding sort of the framework in which the mammoth is found. I mean, there's upwards of likely going to be 80,000 years of history exposed in this cut, which is absolutely fantastic. And the mammoth is coming from just right in the middle of all of that. So it's a perfect sort of framework to understand sort of the later parts of the Pleistocene environments. So at the bottom of the section is a gravel unit. As we mentioned, this is what the miners were after. This is where your gold is located. We're expecting it to be about 80,000 years. We have some pending dates on this, so we'll find out. And it underlies everything there. On top of that is a silt unit, a loess unit that's very barren in organics. There are paleo soils in this unit. It is mostly just a silt unit, though. It's material that's washing in off the hillsides. And this is from the glaciation prior to the last one. And so in the Yukon, we call that the Gladstone glaciation. And it's a time frame roughly 71,000 to 57,000 years before present. Then the mammoth unit, or the mammoth layer. This is a warmer interval that follows that glaciation. So we call it the last interstadial. It's warm, not as warm as today. It's definitely wetter than the glacial period. So we're starting to see more gravel in this unit coming out of the tributary, more organics and silt as well. And then on top of that is the last ice age unit, which is again more of a barren silt, not so much organic material, very dry environment. And that's represented by a time frame of 29,000 to 14,000 years before present. And then you have your modern organics on top of the entire section. Just to give you an idea of what some of those contacts look like, this is the contact between that earlier glaciation and then the warm interval that followed it. You can see sort of the more barren silt overlain by a more organic rich silt. At the top of the section, there's this beautiful volcanic ash or tephra. And that is, we expect this to be the Dawson tephra that was deposited around 29,000 years ago. So these samples are out for analysis right now, and we'll confirm all of the stratigraphy. This is the location in which the mammoth was discovered, thanks to Travis. And on the left-hand side, this is just sort of a sketch of what the mammoth would have looked like in the bank when Travis was excavating. So it was facing into the bank. Its feet and trunk were extending into the bank, and so we would have seen its back and the back of its head at the time of excavation. And so it was laying on a gravel unit. The gravel unit is a stream channel that's coming out of that tributary stream on that alluvial fan. And it's positioned right on the edge of the alluvial fan at the base of a slope. And so it was laying on the gravel, and it was overlain by a silty unit, a muddy unit that also has these, and I've highlighted them here, these organic clumps of vegetation in it. And they're very discontinuous. They're just round blobs of organic material within that overlying silt unit. And that gave us a clue. After some time thinking about this, after we did that initial site investigations, and these photos are from June 21st. What was this unit, and what is it telling us? And we've deduced, after spending more time there, that this is likely a landslide unit, and this is the unit or the process in which that is responsible for Nun Cho Ga's preservation. Not necessarily her death. We don't know why she died, but we know that the landslide was responsible for her preservation. So these are some landslides from the Kluane Range that I took a few years ago. These are detachment layer slides. It could have been something like this. These are triggered in high rainfall events, and it very well could have been something similar to this, although the vegetation would have been different at the time of Nun Cho Ga. But looking more closely at the landslide unit, and you start to, we return to this site. I worked there probably for almost 10 days this summer, and digging into this unit, I was always drawn back to the landslide unit. It's about 1 meter thick, up to 1.5 meters thick in places, 0.5 meter in others, but generally fairly continuous across a great width of the section, about 40 meters or so. And it's remarkable because you have to realize that this landslide unit is from the moment and from the day in which the mammoth was living. So it belongs with the mammoth in time. And so we have a 20-meter section that covers 80,000 years, and 1 meter of that is associated with the moment that the mammoth died. That's how significant this layer is, right? It's not 1 millimeter thick, like you would expect the rest of the years to be represented, or a fraction of a millimeter for that matter. This is 1 meter of material from the hillside that buries her. And so within that unit, you have vegetation, clumps that were entrained in the landslide itself, that are absolutely pristine in their preservation. They're folded, they're upside down, some of them are in proper sort of placement. This shows you some of the samples that I've collected. The star is roughly where the mammoth was from, and so these samples are from about 8 meters away or so along the section. And you start digging into these organic, these turf samples, and you start to revel in, here is the mammoth steppe. Here is the steppe tundra that dominated the landscape. There was no trees at this time. It was all rich in various grasses and sedges and shrubs. There's a close-up of some of the plant material in some of these turf samples, and they're just absolutely pristine. And I have to say, it took my breath away when you start seeing green grass, literally from that day, preserved in these samples. Not all of it is green. There's just certain situations within the landslide unit that you'll uncover this material, and it still has the chlorophyll in it. So it's outstanding preservation. It really is. So this is an example of what the landscape would have looked like from southwestern Siberia, treeless, grasses, sedges, shrubs, predominantly. This is what the Klondike Plateau, home of the Chantacwitchin people, would have looked like at this time. We're collecting other samples at this site for other analysis in other parts of the stratigraphy, including ground squirrel nests from in and around the Dawson Tephra, and that's on the left-hand photo there. We took samples for environmental DNA. This is shreds and pieces of DNA that are encased in the sediment of the silt from the various plants and animals that are alive at various times. So we've got a complete sequence of samples through the whole 20 meters of the section that we'll be able to look at sort of what plants and animals were alive and living. We got a very detailed set of samples from the 2 meter zone in which Nun Cho Ga was found as well. This is a photograph of Scott Cocker from the University of Alberta taking those samples on, I believe it was like June 24th or something like that. So just to summarize, this is the drainage in which Nun Cho Ga was living upon. She was on the alluvial fan the day that she died from this tributary, and for whatever reason, she died on the alluvial fan. And it's definitely a muddy environment. There's gravel, but where there's not gravel on the alluvial fan, it is very silty. And ultimately, she was buried in a landslide event. And that preservation is absolutely critical. It protects her from predators, and it allows the permafrost to encase her very quickly, and allows for that mummification process to begin in an appropriate manner. So the stars really do need to align in order for something like this to occur. And then it's ultimately buried by more fan sedimentation. At this point, I'd like to hand it over to Elizabeth Hall, a paleontologist with Heritage Branch, and she'll walk you through some of the details of the various mummies that have been found.
Okay, I'm going to talk about Nun Cho Ga, but I'm first going to talk about some other different mummies. Pleistocene mummies are naturalized mummies, so it's a natural process. There's three main ways to create these mummies. One is extreme cold. The other one is dry, arid conditions. And the third one is reduced oxygen levels. And sometimes it can be a combination of all three. Okay, so natural mummies are actually quite rare, and one of the rarest of these mummies is actually this woolly rhino. So up until 2015, this was the most complete woolly rhino. Woolly rhinos are not found in Eastern Beringia. It is on the top of my Pleistocene wish list. Every summer I hope that I am going to find a woolly rhino, and every summer I'm quite disappointed that I don't. So this particular woolly rhino is female. She's not very complete. Really, it's just the left side of her. And when they excavated her, she was actually found at a gold mine, just like Nun Cho Ga. Unfortunately, her head detached, and parts of her body were spread out. They also found two partial juvenile woolly rhinos. But what was really interesting about this particular woolly rhino was that they were able to see two nipples. And so what this meant was that they were able to determine that woolly rhinos only have one calf at one point in time. So this is probably one of the most famous preserved mummies. It's Blue Babe. It was found in Fairbanks in the 70s. It's from a gold mine once again. This one shows sort of the classic Vivianite. I don't know if most of you are familiar with this, but it's a process that happens. Basically, the phosphorus that's in the bones or on the skin reacts in the soil that it's entombed in. And basically, the iron replaces the calcium, and then when it is oxidized, when it's exposed to oxygen, it turns to this beautiful blue color. Blue Babe is an adult male, and it's fairly complete, although it probably died due to predation. There are claw marks on the hide, there's teeth marks, and probably was preyed upon by a cave lion. Okay, the next one is one that's from Paradise Hill, which is here in the Klondike, from Tony Beats's mine. We collected her in 2016. This was another story where the miners informed us right away that they had found this mummified remains, and it was right at the beginning of our field season, so we were just about to bring up our trailer and were able to get out to the mine fairly quickly. Unfortunately, she probably initially was complete, but due to the hydraulic monitoring, it ripped her in half, and we were unable to retrieve the back portion of her. She's probably about 80,000 years old. This is an older site, and so she's beyond the range of radiocarbon dating. We're in the process of studying her, but what we know so far is that she probably is female. She was pretty young. She was maybe about 6 months when she died, and she probably died in the fall, and that's basically by looking at her antlers. Probably our second to most famous mummified remain is Jur, and she was found that same summer as the caribou, which I will refer to as Beedaboo. So she's nearly complete, and she probably is the world's most complete wolf pup. We were able to do quite a bit of work with her, so we have radiocarbon dated her skin, and it's beyond the range of radiocarbon dating, so it means it's more than 50,000 years old. And so we wanted to sort of refine that date, so what we did was to take some hair follicles, and we did DNA analysis on the hair follicles. And what we were able to determine was that she was somewhere, based on that DNA, she was somewhere between 75,000 to about 56,000 years old. And then we used one other technique, which is stable isotope analysis, on the tooth enamel, and we looked at the oxygen. And based on other remains, she fell into a time period that Jeff referred to, the MIS3, which is roughly 56,000 to about 29,000 years old. So based on all that information together, we came up with an age of about roughly 56,000 to 57,000 years old. We did x-rays on her, so we were able to look inside of her body, and we were able to determine her age based on the ossification rates within her body. So she was roughly 5 to 7 weeks old when she died. We think that probably because she does have fur, she's pretty complete. In order to sort of preserve fur and things like nails, you really need to be entombed right away. So she probably died within her den, or she was basically encapsulated in some sort of sediment. So this is another mummified remains that is from the Yukon that currently actually is in the Canadian Museum of Natural History, but is on the way back to the Yukon, possibly come early spring. This is a black-footed ferret, and these animals still exist today. It's actually a male, and a young male. Once again, there was x-rays that were done on this black-footed ferret, and they were able to look at the ossification rates within the skeleton to determine the age. So this ferret will be coming back to the Yukon as part of the new Beringia exhibit that should be up and running come spring. So if you're interested, come by to the Yukon Beringia Center and check her out, or him out. This is possibly the world's most completely preserved mummified remain. This is Sparta. She is a female. She is a cave lion. She was pretty young when she died. She was probably about a month to a month and a half when she perished. Once again, because she's so well preserved, she probably was entombed in sediment, so it could have been a den collapse, or she might have died in the snow. She is one of 4 cave lion kittens that have been found in the world. Okay, and now we're down to the woolly mammoths. So this is Layuba. She was found in 2007. She is the most complete woolly mammoth found yet. Nun Cho Ga might give her a run for her money, but at present, Layuba is still the world's most complete mammoth. She had an interesting story. She naturally eroded out from the bank and probably sat there for a year before she was collected. And when she was retrieved, by that point, she had been scavenged upon, so she lost part of her right ear, she lost part of her tail. She doesn't have her toenails, and she doesn't really have a lot of fur, and that's probably because when she died in potentially a wet environment, or it was during sort of a freeze-thaw event where basically when she warmed up, the skin started to degrade, and then the hair slipped off. Okay, so now we're at Nun Cho Ga. So Nun Cho Ga is roughly the same size as Layuba, so that gives us an indication of how old she is. So Layuba, they determined to be 1 month to about 1.5 months old. In order to refine this, we will have to look at her teeth to get a better sense of how old she actually was when she died. We were able to determine that she's female, although we probably should take a closer look to make sure for certain that she is. She is the 9th woolly mammoth that has been found in the world, and she is the 2nd one found in North America. The first woolly mammoth ever found actually was in North America, was from a gold mine in Fairbanks, and her name is Effie, but she's quite partial. We don't actually know what sex she is. It's just she's part of a head, partial trunk, one of her limbs. Okay, so Nun Cho Ga is fairly complete, and she has features that some of these other baby mammoths only have partials or they don't have at all. And so, first off, she has the classic baby skull. It's actually quite compact. The bones inside will be quite thin, quite papery. Eventually, her skull will start to grow, it'll start to vault, it'll thicken, and she'll look more like a classic woolly mammoth, but right now she looks like a standard just baby elephant. Her trunk was preserved, and this isn't often preserved. It either gets scavenged upon or it's a point of weakness that can break off. And so when we see her trunk, we can see that it's really quite complete. And what's very cool about preservations of woolly mammoth trunks is that they are totally different than modern-day elephants. So there's two main features that make them unique. The first is actually the tip of the trunk itself. So these are called fingers or processes, and modern-day elephants have them, but they're not the same morphology. So a modern-day Asian elephant, they're pretty short and roughly the same size, the top and the bottom. The African elephant, the top one is a little bit longer than the bottom one, but with the woolies, both processes are quite thin and quite long. Just above that is sort of a flange or a wing on the trunk itself, and this is a feature that's just found in woolly mammoths. And basically, this is to protect those processes, those tips at the end, which don't have a lot of fur on them. So in the winter when it's quite cold, what they'll do is just roll up that trunk and sort of nest it in that flange. Okay, so Nun Cho Ga did not have a lot of hair on her body, and this is pretty normal for a lot of the mummified remains if they are found in wet environments or if they have undergone some sort of freeze-thaw cycle. We did find some hair in the sediment around her, and with the hair we can do quite a bit of things. We can do some ancient DNA, we can determine age, we can determine gender. There's quite a lot of information that hair can provide. Nun Cho Ga had her complete tail, and this is even more rare than the trunks. And there's only two other baby woolly mammoths who had a complete tail. She also has this feature that's found on modern-day modern-day elephants and mammoths, which is a tail flap, and that covers the anus. Basically, it helps when it's really cold out, and also helps to stop insects from biting areas that are quite sensitive. Another very cool feature about Nun Cho Ga is the bottom or the pad of her feet. At this point, it's actually quite thin. Over time, if she was to have gotten older, it would get quite thick, up to 1.5 inches, and it would develop these deep cracks from walking around. So looking at the base of her foot, we can tell that she hasn't done a lot of walking. But another cool feature about her feet is that she does have her toenails, and this is pretty rare in the mummified mammoth world. So another feature that baby mammoths have is basically a hump of fat that's found just around their neck area. And with Nun Cho Ga, it's not very noticeable, but it should be there. It's not similar to a Bactrian camel, where they basically have an encased reservoir for fat. This kind of just sits loosely underneath their skin. And one way to know if she was well nourished is to look at the fat all throughout her body. She should have a nice thick layer of subcutaneous fat. At this point, we're not certain if that's there. You can see from the other picture that she unfortunately was ripped 2 when she was removed from the ground. And so this is unfortunate, but in some ways it was kind of fortunate because part of her cecum actually had been dislodged. And so we have this cecum, and it's really the beginning, the entrance part for your long intestine. And this is where fermentation takes place. And both Jeff and I can attest to the fact that there was fermentation taking place in the cecum because it smells quite strongly. So the cecum itself is what we will use to do some radiocarbon dating. So we're dating the tissue, we're dating the contents within the cecum itself. We're also dating some of the hair, and then we will be dating some of the vegetation that Jeff talked about in the landslide that entombed her. The cecum itself is interesting, and I'm toying with whether or not I want to share my theory about what the contents are, because I know everyone just had their breakfast, but there is there is a behavior that a lot of herbivores partake in. It's very normal. Usually it's something that happens as an infant, although some animals, such as rabbits, do this throughout their entire life, and it's called coprophagy. So it basically is the consumption of feces. And when you're a newborn, you don't have that gut flora that's required to help break down food. And so when they studied Layuba and they looked at the intestinal remains within her, and they're once again roughly around the same age, they were surprised because, of course, at this point, it's just mother's milk that she should be consuming. And when they analyzed that intestinal content, what they found, which looks, based on description, looks very similar to what we pulled out, what they found was that it was the fecal remain from her mother. And so this is how you get live symbiotic bacteria into your gut that helps you break down cellulose, which helps you to utilize the nutrition that's found in the plant matter. So, on that note, the contents will be analyzed to determine if this indeed is what we have found within Nun Cho Ga. There is one more feature that I actually forgot to mention, and I'm just going to go, can I go back? If you look to the right side on her head, I forgot to put an arrow there, but she has this duct. It's called a temporal duct. And it's a feature that modern day elephants have, and it has been hypothesized that mammoths have it based on cave art. And a good friend of ours, Dick Mole, actually was the first one to identify this on mummified remains of mammoths, on the Yukagir mammoth. And basically, it's a duct is an opening for a gland, which is a way that these animals communicate with one another. It's a mixture of proteins, lipids, pheromones, organic compounds, and it will just sort of extrude. It's very odorous and sticky, but it's a way of letting other elephants know if you're ready to spend time together. Okay, so with that, there is more, obviously, more discussions to be had as to how we're going to research Nun Cho Ga further. But I would like to, I can't actually see this. I would like to acknowledge everybody who's taken part in this discussion today. This was obviously, probably like the most amazing thing that's ever happened in all of our careers. And maybe I'll just pass it over to Jeff to wrap it up.
Just like to thank everybody for coming this morning and sharing in the story with us. I would especially like to acknowledge Brian and Sharon McGoggin from Treadstone. They produced this wonderful little logo celebrating the unique season that they had. And Travis for being as observant as he was on that particular day. Chief Joseph for joining us here, and looking forward to the future partnership with the Trondheim on this project, and of course with Elizabeth and Grant as well. There's a lot of people that have contributed so far to the care and really just looking after Nun Cho Ga and participating in the geology and trying to do this right. So they're acknowledged here, and just thank you again for coming out, and we look forward to filling you in more on the story in the future. Thanks.